Wonderful people. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being with us today. And as we say, old enough, but not qualified for the position. As we know, just being a husband or just being married does not make a man a good husband. It's like a car. We're old enough to drive, but if we never been inside of a car, started up, know how to back up, notice the gears, know how to adjust the car, the speed limit, stay in your right lane. A lot of things that come about in driving. A lot of things come about in being a husband. A lot of things come about in being a leader, even. So we have to take these things into consideration. We want to know why are so many men today in this area, this uh, atmosphere, are not qualified to be husbands because there's a policy. Yes, there's a policy. There's conditions that we met. And God has laid them all out. And we've been doing over and over and over again. But yet and still, when the rubber meets the road, we flounder. We don't do things the way we're supposed to do it. We leave all things messed up. That's why there's 50% of the marriages wind up in divorce. Well, there this and that. We hear all these different things, but then look at the structure, look at the foundation, look at what it is about the leadership, the man that was placed in the position of being a husband, being a provider, of being a protector, of being a priest in the house. So, therefore, we just want to talk about these things to let you know that what's going on. Are these going to be our leaders for tomorrow? These are supposed to be our leaders for now, not if it's going to be. These are leaders tomorrow, but they're not qualified for the leadership. They're not qualified for the husbandship. So, what are we going to do is try to prepare them even more, at least suggest them and teach them and show them that, hey, there's some things that's missing because you're having problems. There are issues. There have a condition at the house. You have a condition in your neighborhood, your community. The situation is going on that leaving you stranded, and then on the outside looking in, trying to figure out what's going on. So, in order to find out, let's say, causes and effects, let's take a trip down memory lane. Okay, memory lane. Back in the late 50s and 60s, there was a situation in the world called Vietnam. And well, Vietnamese, like, was supposed to be two different countries, South Vietnam, North Vietnam, blah, 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 because of World War II and the Korean War and all this stuff that came about. Well, the governments of different world started dividing these different countries up. All right, now, South Vietnam had a thing called um, a little war. All right, it was more like a civil war. People wanted to either join the North. They just didn't like the atmosphere of the country in the South. This, that, and other. Anyway, so now they holler out for America to help them, right? So America can get into the war material, war situation back in the late 50s and 60s, right? Then also we had a thing called the Cold War with Russia. Now, all this stuff that was going on and the corruption and everything, there was chaos at home, chaos, because so many of the young men and women protested against this war. It was not a popular situation, and it shouldn't have been. It should have been something that was left alone, left out. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's yesterday. Okay, now. So with all this protest came about back in the 60s, then with the protests, our youngsters, young people started to say, no, no more of this. They had a cultural revolution. Cultural revolution said that, okay, hippie generation, they call it themselves, right? Drugs, sex, rock and roll, right? So everything was just open back in the 60s. So fast forward to what Vietnam really jumped off. It went ahead on, but then they lost in the end anyway. But anyway, a lot of people died. A lot of people were, hurt, come back, messed up and everything, this, the other, right? But then in the course of all of this happening, government changed situations. A lot of things went down. A lot of things happened. Back in the 70s, okay, the change in the school system, they said it was. Okay, it took prayer out of school. No more corporal punishment. You had to talk to a child, put them in a corner, maybe stand them up or send them to the principal's office. They will either be dismissed or do in-school uh, uh, counseling, something like that, right? Punishment, that is. But in the meantime, you couldn't spank your child. Child could pick up the phone, call 911 on you. And then the court system say, well, you're responsible for them. You have to take care of this and that other. Force the parents into a situation. Then here come another situation called the birthing system. Abortion was legal. Started back in those days too, right? So now all of these things started coming about in our society that we wasn't used to. Some of the conditions that was coming upon us is now like, where is all this coming from? So people changed. The father was out of the home because another situation came up because place called taking advantage of the situation. Wow. Yes. So now people like withdrawing money from the government for child support and all this stuff. You know what I mean? So now it's like, what we're gonna do? The man was out of the home. Man could go home, and that way, the war system started winding down. A lot of companies started going overseas. A lot of people become homeless. A lot of people become unemployed, and you can't go with your family where they living. So now the family structure was more or less uh, in the area of the wife or the woman. So she was more or less the head of the family more or less nowadays, right? Some had a job, some didn't, but the men really was like left out there in left field because the basic jobs was like gone. The basic jobs were gone. The higher classified jobs, position wise, it wasn't there for us. So a lot of things went down, went wrong. Then next thing you know, there was drugs everywhere. Then another little situation came on that was called HIV, a pandemic that was it even, right? Between the drugs, the pandemic, unemployment, violence, you can't go home. It's like can't be with your woman or your girlfriend or with your family to raise your children. So we just gave up. Men gave up. So back in the 70s and the 80s, now all of this stuff was coming on left, right, and in between. Then here come the 90s. Here come the 90s. So those who were born in the 60s having babies in the late 70s, right? And then in the 80s and 90s, you had teenage sons. They were like, who's gonna take care of them? Who's gonna control them? So he broke it down into different situations in the family structure, right? One mother says that, okay, I don't care. I'm just getting my little money from welfare, that is. And here it is, taking care of you guys, supposedly. So she's out there on her own, more or less, too, right? The kids were left in the system of the school. Like saying like, okay, the school was the babysitter did back in those days. School was the babysitter. You can't punish them. You can't say nothing to them too much. And then teachers wasn't really teaching because the kids was now becoming rebellious. This is the second generation from those in the 60s. Now, can't say this, you can't do that, can't do that, can't do the other thing, right? So now moving forward, those children that were born in the 80s now start to be with teenagers in 2000, a little bit old, right? But they are also now becoming parents themselves. With all of this abortion, with all this legality, not legal stuff, but all of this stuff that was coming on in the justice system, we don't know where we're going, what we're doing, everything. Kids were raising themselves. Then you had another parent that says, okay, I don't want my child, my son, going out there with all of those rough people and stuff. I'm going to take more close attention to him. And that son became more close to the mom. That son that close to the mom became less masculine than ordinary and usually. He wasn't allowed to do a lot of different things. He would push down, put down, and then his masculinity was more or less deprived. So now, then there was a third mom. The third mom said that, okay, she's working every day just like the second mom was. But this mom was more or less like she wanted to take care of her family. She wanted to provide for them and everything, but she didn't have time to raise a child all by herself because she did not know the principles. She did not know value. She did not know structure of raising a man child. She didn't know structure about what the principles of God was towards the man in the home or the man child. So therefore, she tried, and the man was like more or less floundering like a fish out of water, more or less. Then they're looking towards the church. Well, the church was having problems back in those days itself. Every time you turn around, it was prophetic statements. They were raising money. They were like hypocrisy all over the place. It was immoral activities all up in the church and everything. So we were all in the dark ages back in those days. And then here come, like I said, the 2000, moving on. Now in the third generation of children being born and moving forward. So we look at the situation today. It's like we're now in the fourth generation of who they are. Under 40s is really, really hard, rough on men today because, like they say, they're not prepared. They're not prepared. You in a situation whereas you have a car, you're old enough to drive, but you're not experienced as a driver. You can't be a chauffeur or nothing like that because you don't drive. You're just sitting in the car riding. So you don't make those decisions. You're in a place where decisions is out the window. So therefore, unless you go through some experiences, and the experiences today, not like the experiences were back in the old days when the grandfather and the great grandfather was there and they were driving these cars like 30, 40, 50 miles an hour. They have a wreck because the cars was like built stronger. The cars today, you have a wreck, but usually you're going 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. Boom, crash, dead. Crash, disability. Crash, you're in trouble. So now, all of the things that was happening today results of what was then, the causes of what happened then. The effects today is that a weaker generation of men, a weaker position of men, not able to be qualified for the position that they're supposed to be into. Leadership. What leadership? Many of them are in jail. Many of them are in a problem where they, like I say, they can't make decisions. They make it. They can't negotiate. Their mentality, their structure, their mindset It's like off the key, off the wall. They don't know about patience. They don't know anything about not they. Okay, don't get me wrong. We're not talking about everybody. We're talking about a generalization of majority, a majority of the men today, not like how we used to be, how it was then, where you had to make decisions, where you had to negotiate, where you had to like humble yourself. When it was good to say thank you, when it was good to say please, may I, uh, how are you doing? They were more or less now in a framework of like, what am I going to do? Of mental anguish, not being there to help others, not being there to know the condition of your uh, counterpart or the lady in your house. It was more or less now do this, do that. I want this, I want that, and I want it now. Give me this and give me that. So now he's like out there by himself. Most men that today is supposed to be husband, not really qualified because when church problem come up so they today they're in a mental anguish, they're, they're depressed, they're suppressed, downplayed, and everything. They're not able to build up to that strong enough to have the backbone to be fearful. They're fearful. There's so much is going on today. It is not funny. So this is why today we need to start talking about helping our young men, helping the brothers that from 40 and down, 50s and down, 50 years old and back towards them. A lot of problems that happen in the home. They say, well, don't tell nobody your business, this and the other. But they need advice. They need suggestions. They need somebody to like take them by the arm or take them by the hand or pat them on the back or the shoulder to let them know you're doing right or let them know you're doing wrong. But we don't do that today like we should do. We don't. So now we're all messed up in violence, we're messed up in corruption, we messed up in lust, we messed up in immorality, we messed up in not being able to function as a male so many times. We disrespect our women. We don't know them. We don't know a woman from left to right. So, but in the older days, a man used to just say, hug a girl, hug a woman, hug his wife, right? And she was more or less let him know body language. Today, there is no body language as far as going, to know whether your wife is having a problem or issue or something like that. We don't know if somebody's pushing up on her. We don't know like she's in a position of going through some trials and tribulation. We don't know her. Get to know her. We don't know them 50,000 body parts that she have that can maneuver and excite her and please her. You know what I mean? When we come home, we're tired. We don't want to be bothered. We're aggravated. We're depressed. We have anxieties, attacks, or either we too busy on our machine thing, playing games. We're too busy to give her attention. And like, okay, so her desires are supposed to be for the desires of the man, and he's supposed to have control over her. But how are you going to have control over some situation when you don't know the position of the situation? It's like we said before. We keep using it as an example. Jumping in the car, saying I'm going to run across town. I'm going to run out of town and next door. So you know the little basic like go to the stop sign. You stop. You look both ways. Boom, boom, boom. You go past the school. You slow down. But that's it. You don't know about the other driver that's acting stupid, that's wavering and everything. You don't know how to pull over and everything. You don't know how to some of this traffic that's going on, especially in some of these cities that I've gone through. I don't want to drive myself. But this is how we know when you're qualified that you can maneuver. You can maneuver. You know how to read the sign. Those red flags all up in our marriage situation. Red flags in traffic. We don't know the difference between a red flag and a green flag and a yellow flag. We just there driving. And next thing you know, we are off the road. Next thing you know, we're lost. Next thing you know, we have a situation going on. So this is why today, more than ever, let us come to teach. Let us come to let men understand and give them the wisdom, know how to handle their home, know how to be the priest in their home, not just because I said so, not just because of you got to get permission for me to wear certain clothes, certain items. Just you know how to explain to your wife, explain to her why she shouldn't go out there half dressed, hanging out with her friends that are unmarried and hanging out late at night. Let her know these things, and then know how to set the boundaries. Know how to say when you do something. Sometimes it's like by experience. So you imitation. That's why they tell us, like in the scripture said, imitate God as beloved children. How are you going to set an example for your wife who you lay back with your 40, with your blunts, with your black and miles, just with your game playing in your hand, and you're not paying her any attention. So she's free to do whatever come in her mind because she hasn't been taught either. All right, you know what I mean? So therefore, people, we got to understand these things and let people know that, hey, there's a structure, there's principles, and there's a value to what is good, what is right. So with that in mind, I just want to thank you. And so we just hope to bring more messages to you in that regard to help these guys, help them to be fathers, help them to be husbands for real. Like you can sow seeds into a field and you have weeds, briars, bushes, and trees that cannot give good lumber. So now the ground becomes tainted and the ground becomes unusable. Oh, wow, that's how you look at a woman? Well, look at what she's going through. You have contaminated her with a bunch of boulders and rocks and potholes and sinkholes, and then you put garbage all in the land and the field so that she's dressed, but she's hurt on the inside. She's messed up on the inside. The ground cannot handle bad seeds. And all of the plants that come up are not good plants. So let's put good seeds into the good soil so that you have a beautiful, wonderful harvest. That's it. And that's principles for doing this. So therefore, wonderful people, thank you for being with us again. And this is Michael Jones. Desire to excel at peopleinlove.com. People, the letter N, LUV.com. And then share this message. Even though, like I say, things happen, but then I ask you to come to help us build up our format, build up our community, subscribe, so that message go farther out there. Because Google's and Facebook and all these people will not put your message out there unless you have more and more uh, connection and more content, and then push it out there for people to listen, to see what we have. There's too many important messages that's coming across that no one is paying attention to, and we got to start paying attention to these messages, especially if they're there to help us. They're not there to harm us, but to help us to grow. That's why we call it edification. Help us to edify one another so that they can be strong. They can come into the light and they come into the blessing of the light. Don't just give up. Give up and being a waste to the fact to be left in a position where everybody can control us besides us being controlling our own home. Be the priest, be the supporter, be the provider, and be the protector. Protect your mate at all times. It's like somebody was saying in another message. Wow. Should a man, um, there's somebody saying in the family, talking about your wife, should he say something? Of course, it's like, duh. You don't say anything about your wife and let other people talk about your wife, especially if she's innocent of what they're saying. And even if she's not innocent, you're supposed to take her, pull her aside, and discuss things with her so that she will know now that how to correct herself, straighten up her act, so that people have no reason to talk about her or to insult her or say anything to her. Because when they say something to her, they're saying it to you. But most men are not paying that an attention. So therefore, wonderful people, thank you again and again and again. And that's how I say, you're old enough, but not qualified for the position. That's it. Take care. Be blessed. Be blessed. Bye now. Ah, yes, yes, yes. And thanks